So my name is Sharon Bell, and it's absolutely my privilege to be able to introduce this afternoon our host, Tema Frank. So Tim and I have been friends for many years. We routinely ask each other for professional advice, and recently we collaborated on the design and the facilitation of several workshops. Tim has worked in customer experience, usability, and marketing for over 3 decades. In 2001, she founded Web Mystery Shoppers, what was in fact the world's first company to test multi-channel customer service. So that included web, phone, chat, email, and in-store. Using social media techniques before social media in fact existed, Tema built a database of 75,000, and you heard me correctly, 75,000 mystery shoppers worldwide. Her clients have included not-for-profit organizations and businesses of all sizes, such as the Royal Bank of Canada, the Bank of America, several Government of Alberta departments, CKUA Radio Network, and the Alberta Motor Association. Tema has presented at conferences. She taught in business schools in the United States, in Canada, in France, in Mexico. And she's been podcasting, as many of you know. She's been podcasting since 2012, and she hosts Frank Reactions podcast on customer experience. So Tema's first book was the best-selling Canada's Best Employers for Women, a guide for job hunters, employees, and employers. And in fact, that book is currently being updated. In my own professional work as a marketing strategist, as a university instructor, understanding customer experience, understanding the idea of PeopleShock is paramount. And Tema, through her book, PeopleShock, has captured what I consider to be the essential elements of the relevant best practices, research, and industry experience into one thoughtful, practical, and engaging book. Congratulations, Tema. And with that, I'd like to welcome Tema Frank, the author of PeopleShock, The Path to Profits When Customers Rule.
Wow, this is so exciting to be here at the end of this, well, not the end, the high point so far of this 4-year journey. It's been 4 years since I first came up with the idea for the book, through to the point of actually writing it, which I think I only stopped researching and started writing because I broke my foot and I couldn't walk and go anywhere. So good strategy if you need to get a book written. Somewhat painful though. So it is really thrilling to have you all here. Now, at a book launch, it is traditional to do a bit of reading from the book. Now, I write pretty much the way I talk, so it may be hard at times to tell when I'm reading from the book and when I'm talking. It's mostly from the book, though. And I'm going to read you a couple of sections. I want to start with the introduction, and I know that some of you have already read the introduction, but for those who haven't, I think it gives you a good overview of what the book is all about. And then I'm going to read a little section that has to do with riding the boom and bust cycles, because I think that's something Albertans have all had to deal with. So my first job when I was 15 was working in a clothing store during a deep discount sale. I was pretty happy at the idea of being able to earn a little bit of extra money. I was not so happy at the idea of spending 8 hours a day in high heels guarding a change room. Stiletto heels. Crazy. To this day, I do not understand why they don't let change room guards sit and why the stiletto heels. Really? I mean, that's just crazy. But anyway, there we went. That was my job. But then things slowed down after the first couple of days, and I got kind of bored. And so I went and started rearranging the racks. So, because it was getting messy. So I had 1 rack per color, and then within each color by size. Made sense to me. My mother, however, who's sitting over there, my mother was appalled by that, because to her, the logical arrangement would have been by size, and then within each size rack by color and style. Well, I don't know whether it was because I was busy arranging things without permission or just that the sale slowed down, but I was let go after 3 days. Now, the interesting thing, though, is I still have not been able to find any research that tells us which of those arrangements actually does generate more sales. I suspect it has to do with who your target market is. If you have the sort of customer who wants to browse, see what's going on, that would be one. If they want to get that pair of navy pants and get out, that would be a different kind of person, and perhaps a different arrangement would make sense. But the reason I bring this up is because the answer to that question is no longer relevant. Because thanks to digitization, soon your phone is going to know what all the clothes are in your closet. It's going to know what events you have coming up and what clothes you might need that you don't currently have. And it will direct you to relevant websites and show you relevant clothes. And if you decide you want to go to a store and try some things on, it'll probably even notify the store that you're on your way and which clothes you're interested in. And when you get there, they'll be waiting for you. So what is the role of humans in all of this? As we enter the era of the Internet of Things, with wristbands and watches telling us what to do, when we should be sleeping, when we should be eating, and telling us, how many more steps to take today, with fridges sending orders to the store to let them know we're out of milk, it seems that less and less depends on humans. And yet, that is precisely what makes humans so critically important now. As more becomes automated, more becomes standardized. People become the only way that you can really differentiate, the only way to stand out in a sea of sameness. This book is about how you can leverage the people factor to survive and thrive in our increasingly competitive era. People are complex. So far, computers have not yet figured out how to replicate the subtleties of human learning, communications, and behavior, although they're getting closer very quickly. In his book, Rise of the Robots, Martin Ford gives many examples of jobs that we once thought of as skilled, knowledge-based jobs that could never be replaced by computers, and more are becoming fully automated. And in many cases, the machines actually do a better job than humans. No doctor can be as thorough a diagnostician as a computer that quickly reviews all the medical studies ever published, the symptoms of thousands of diseases, the likelihood that a particular collection of symptoms in a person of a specific age, weight, gender, family history, and personal history is one specific disease. Physically, computers are also becoming much more capable. They now perform surgeries guided remotely by doctors and specialists. Robots are set to replace most of the workers in fast food restaurants. In fact, the technology already exists. The main reason it hasn't been implemented in a widespread way yet is because of political backlash. But I would predict that it's not going to be very long before McJobs have all been replaced by automation. Part of the temptation to switch to robots is that they're more predictable than humans. Ask any entrepreneur, and there are several of you in this room, and the odds are they'll tell you that the part of business they find the most frustrating or like least is dealing with people issues. I can hear that get some recognition there. Despite the best efforts of people like Frederick Winslow Taylor, who was the father of time and motion studies, which were designed at getting the best and most production possible out of factory workers, the reality is humans do not perform the same way machines do. Simple repetitive tasks are almost always better performed by machines. Humans get bored, we lose focus, we get tired, we get repetitive strain injuries that take a lot longer to heal than to replace a machine part. Of course, staff are not the only people that businesses need to worry about, far from it. They have to be equally concerned about the people who work for their suppliers, their prospects and customers, investors, and the public at large. Thanks to social media, the number of people who can have views and comments that become relevant to your organization has expanded exponentially. All of those people can be irrational, emotional, and impulsive. So think about all the possible permutations and combinations of these human elements that can affect your business results. It quickly becomes obvious that it is impossible to control. It's also impossible to completely predict and program. As a leader, you need to be thinking now about how you can best leverage the robots to do what they do best, and the humans to use their strengths. When we get to the point where we no longer need that teenager in the stiletto heels guarding the change rooms, we will still need humans. They will be the ones who understand the subtleties of what your customers want. They'll be the customers themselves. And they will be needed to provide the experiences and human connections that we all so crave. I call this increasingly important role of the human element PeopleShock. This book is about PeopleShock, why getting the human side right is crucial, and how to use it to your advantage so you can compete successfully in the digital era. I talk in the book about what I call the 3 Ps of profit, and they're kind of an important concept. So the way I've broken it out is those Ps are promise, people, and process. So the promise is the first P, and basically it is your brand. It represents who you are in the eyes of the public, and it's also, if you do it right, it's what inspires and motivates your staff, and it provides a filter for you to use when you have to make difficult decisions. It helps you know how to do that. It will help your employees be motivated, and that's important because if your employees are unhappy, there's no way they're going to be providing great customer service. Those two are intertwined. The second P is the people, and there I break it into internal people, which is to say your staff, and external people, which is that whole range of other outsiders who are important. So the staff, as I said, are really important. They've got to be focused on and happy with what they're doing, or it's not going to work. And the external ones includes people like prospects, customers, distributors and resellers, suppliers, investors and lenders, influencers, including the mass media and social media people, and even competitors. Strong, positive relationships with all of them will give you an edge. In this book, I talk about several ways that you might not have thought of that you can build some of those strong relationships in a positive way. And the third P is process, and that's the area where probably the most companies struggle and go wrong. But the exciting thing is, it's also the area where you've probably got the potential to show the fastest return on investment. If you improve your processes in the right way, it's going to save you time and money, and it's going to save your staff and customers frustration. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about riding the boom and bust cycles. We all live in a part of the world where until the recent tumbling of oil prices, things had been booming for years. The biggest problem that many companies faced was simply getting and keeping enough staff to keep the operation going. My 15-year-old kid could walk into any store or restaurant and get a job with no experience very easily. When business is booming like that, it's really easy to miss customer experience problems. But it's also one of the times when you're most likely to have them. Things seem to be going well, so leadership's attitude is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But like a home that needs re-roofing, cracks may be creeping in that won't be noticed until there's a downpour. While everybody's scrambling to keep up, the systems, processes, hiring and training needed to deliver on the company's promises have fallen behind. Now I get it's painful to take the time and spend the money to get the roof redone when there's no obvious hole. But if you wait until the downpour, the costs and hassles are far worse. This is the trap that prevents many mid-sized businesses from growing into large ones and sees them falling back into small ones or dying altogether. Now let's talk about the other extreme. A natural reaction to periods of stagnation or shrinking sales is to retrench. Whether it's the economy overall that has slowed down or just your company's sales, it's common to invest less and lay off staff. When you do that, customer service is pretty certain to suffer. The staff remaining are demoralized. Their aging equipment is not working very well. Your sales staff are likely to be feeling kind of desperate and are much more tempted to make promises of things you can't possibly deliver on. If it's an economy-wide slowdown, then your suppliers are probably facing similar problems. And so if they're having problems, those problems get passed on to you and ultimately to your customers. In a study of how companies dealt with recessions, researchers found that 9% of companies came out of recessions more strongly than had gone into it. Only 9%. Those that did outperform competitors post-recession by 10% or more in growth and sales and profits. The companies that took a slash and burn approach with big cost cuts were the least likely to succeed after the recession. But the answer isn't simply to just invest more during the recession either. Big spenders did only slightly better. The key is to get more strategic with both spending and cuts during the recession. The companies most likely to thrive post-recession, found the authors, were those who cut costs carefully by focusing on operational efficiency rather than cost cutting. At the same time, they invested in more in marketing, research and development, and new assets because those things were actually pretty cheap during the recession. And by improving those things during the recession, it meant they were really ready to take off when the recession ended. In other words, they did the type of thorough process review that's advocated in this book. They looked at everything from how to get their supplies right through to serving their customers. They figured out how to make the whole process more effective and efficient. Companies that slash costs without concentrating on the people and processes struggle when a recession ends because they have to catch up. Those that have focused instead on doing things better benefit from those efficiencies both during the recession and afterwards. The authors contrast how Office Depot and Staples handled the recession of the year 2000. Office Depot laid off 6% of its staff. Its operational costs didn't really go down much because it was just fewer people struggling to do the same types of work. Staples actually increased its workforce by 10%. It closed down stores that weren't doing well, but staff were redeployed so that the company could offer new services and better support on high-end, high-profit products. Staples also took a close look at how it could streamline to cut its operating costs without hurting customer experience. As a result, it, quote, came out of the recession stronger, bigger, and more profitable than it had been in 1999. On average, Staples was about 30% more profitable than its arch rival in the 3 years after the recession. Whether times are tough or booming, the 3P profit formula of promise, people, and process is the key to success in our hyper-competitive world. Implementing it thoroughly takes courage, determination, and persistence, especially in tough economic times. Fundamentally, this book is about 3 things. First, survival. Without understanding customer experience and the people and processes behind creating consistently great ones, your organization is doomed. Hate to bring you the bad news. Second, profits. This is a time of incredible opportunity for companies that really come to grips with PeopleShock. The people factor is hard. As my trainer over there says, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. And he did make me work out this morning. That way I was able to schlep books later. But that very difficulty is why, if you can get it right, you will come out on top. And third, satisfaction. And I'm not just talking here about the satisfaction of your staff and your customers, although obviously that's crucial and that's mostly what the book is about. I'm talking about you. Because if you have satisfied staff, customers, suppliers, lenders, if all of those people are satisfied, you'll be a happier person too. So that gives you a little overview of the book. Before I wrap up, I wanted to just mention a few things. First of all, you know, when I was trying to decide what section to read from this book, and I came to the idea of reading this bit about recession because over the last year I've spoken to so many business owners who've talked about how difficult it's been to keep things going and the difficult decisions about making staff layoffs and should we or how can we carry on. So I would like to just offer to anybody who's interested, I would be happy to do a free 45-minute session with you at any time. Just grab one of my cards and let me know, and we can sit down and talk about it, and maybe there's some ideas from the book that might be able to help you. Second thing I wanted to mention is you'll see around the walls we've got up little quotes from the book, and I would like to encourage you to take a quote that resonates with you. So feel free to just rip those off the wall and take one home. Show it to your colleagues. Third thing I wanted to mention is over there you will see there is a little tea display. And a good friend of mine, Sharon, not the Sharon who introduced me, but the other Sharon who is over there. Sharon is a very hardworking young woman who's been here for several years from the Philippines. And she needs to raise money really to get her family here, and particularly a son with autism. And so she has started selling teas. So if you're interested, no pressure, but it's over there. Just go check it out. So other than that, I would be happy to answer any questions you have. And after that, I would be happy to sign books for anyone who would like. Oh, yes. Also, I would like to thank Scott from 7 Degrees Wine, who is helping us with the wine tonight. And Scott, I hope you brought business cards as well. If you didn't, shame on you. We need to talk. Okay, are there any questions? Somebody? Yes.
Can you talk about Facebook and social media and PeopleShock? Are we training our young people to be better robots through social media, and actually are losing the subtleties that you're referring to?
I don't know that we're training them to be better robots. I do think that there is a real risk that they're living in an echo chamber. That is the part that really worries me about it. Where I see from a customer experience perspective that companies are really doing themselves a disservice, though, is because they haven't staffed their call centers adequately, they're training people to blast them on social media. Because if you blast on social media, you get a fast response. And that is just stupid. Like, do you want people blasting you on social media? It would make far more sense for you to have good, fast responses within your contact center and not have people get so frustrated they go public. Does that answer your question a little? We can talk more. Other questions? Anybody? Yes.
So you talk about the things in your book applying to business. How do you think it applies to something like healthcare or government?
I'm so glad you asked that. She wasn't a plant. Because honestly, the principles of this book apply to everybody. Yes, I talked about profit, and I'll be honest, I did that because I want business people to buy the book. But but the reality is I've done a lot of work with government organizations and nonprofits, and for those same principles apply perhaps even more. The promise is so vitally important when you're in healthcare or in a nonprofit organization. That's your mission. That's why you're doing what you're doing. The people are every bit as important in any organization. You need to have those solid relationships. And again, if it's a nonprofit, it's even more important because a lot of them are volunteers, so they can just walk away if you're not treating them right and not inspiring them. And the process, and this is what I find very frustrating, particularly in healthcare, but also with a lot of nonprofit organizations, and I have sat on quite a few nonprofit boards, is because again, they're typically scrambling to try and do so much. It's very, very hard to take the time to step back and say, okay, are all these things we're doing really fitting our mandate? What should we be doing? What should we not be doing? And how could we be doing it better, more effectively, and in a way that would serve our user base better? Thank you for that question. Others? Yes.
Hi, I am one of those lucky middle managers in a company that has a very large architecture and a lot of process weight. What can we do in the middle to build and sustain a customer advocacy culture in a place where the industry is really established and I'm just coming up against a lot of walls?
That is a great question too, and I actually write about that quite a bit in the book. There are a couple of things. First of all, you want to look for individuals, people who, like you, care and want to make things better. And so you start developing a little team, ideally a cross-functional team, but if not, even just within your own little department. You can inspire people within that department with the great 3 Ps. And then when people start seeing, oh my goodness, things are going a lot better over there, and I've got case studies in the book where this is exactly what they did, then it will start to spread. People will come back to you and say, well, what exactly are you doing there? So that is one way. I mean, I know there are a lot of consultants who just say, if the CEO is not on board, I'm not even going there. And, you know, from a consultant's perspective, that makes your life a lot easier. It's definitely easier to achieve this if you have senior leadership on board. But if you don't, just start small. Look also for some kind of pilot project that might not be that expensive to do, and try and get permission to do that. Look for something where you can really show a difference. And sometimes it's not that hard to show a difference. You know, sometimes it's a simple matter of going out on some customer calls and getting some real insight from them, and then making a few changes based on that. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yes?
My question is why you use this title as your book, and how you explain the meaning of the title.
Okay, well, the title is because I really believe that the core of a successful organization is the people, and that you have to get the people variables right. And also because I do think that is the hardest part. You know, I think that if people did operate as smoothly as even buggy computers work, it would still make, you know, it would make it a lot easier for everybody to compete. So I think people are the core, and I think the shock part comes in because those organizations that aren't getting the 3 Ps right are going to be shocked, potentially fatally, by those who do. Yep.
So are there some industries or countries that are more shock resistant, people shock resistant?
Shock resistant as in resistant to being shocked, or resistant to, you know.
That are more amenable for automation and they don't need people. So, so are there shock resistant businesses and industries?
Well, in terms of the industries, that changes very, very rapidly. So, for instance, well, Uber, they've caught on, but Uber was a great example where they shocked the heck out of the taxi industry and basically are destroying that industry with good reason, because the industry was not serving the people all that well. But Uber itself has realized that if they just rested on their laurels, they'd be out soon because autonomous cars, self-driving cars are going to be in soon. So they have to stay on top as well. So I think, honestly, any business is susceptible to it. The least susceptible, and the ones where you will typically get the worst customer service and customer experience, are government-backed monopolies. But even there, ultimately, pressure changes. So taxis had government backing, and Uber has been managing to change that. Airbnb, same thing. So I think potentially they're all vulnerable. And in terms of countries, you know, if you've got a country where, like China, where there are billions of people and many of them are desperate for work, you may not have to care as much about how you treat your staff. You may be able to treat them more as robots. But even there, they have started shifting to automate more and use humans less, because the people are starting to say, you know what, we don't have to work like slaves anymore. So it's always in flux, and I think that's true everywhere.
Yes, Tema, this is not so much a question as it is a statement, but when I read the book, I realized this book is not just for businesses. This is a people book, and everybody deals with people, and we are all people, and as a result, everybody should really read the book. I'm serious. I was undermining stuff. I was certain things, and I just thought that so much of this applies to what I do, and I don't have a business. Well, it's not a big business, right?
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that I've actually found very gratifying is because when I was writing it, I was thinking of slightly larger organizations, but you are one of many solopreneurs, basically, who have reacted that way, who've said to me that they really got a lot of value out of the book. So I'm really happy that it's having that impact, and thank you for saying that. Anything else? I think we'll wrap it up here because it's time for people to get back to drinking and eating. And I will just sit down here, and I'm happy to sign books for anyone who's got a copy and would like me to sign. And thank you all for coming.